Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast. Ozcast. Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
Your organisation runs training courses for your staff and customers. Only problem is, it's time-consuming, inconvenient and costly. Take a leaf out of our book. The School of Hard Knock Knocks uses the online training platform by YZ, and our team and customers love it. It's simple to use, supports every media format, audio, video, text, and looks great on desktops, tablets and mobiles. And for a limited time, quote SHKK when you arrange a demo and get 10% off your first year's plan. YZ helps us deliver comedy courses around the world. Imagine what it could do for your organisation. YZ, that's WYZED.com. YZ, online learning made simple.
You're listening to the School of Hard Knock Knocks podcast with me, Steve Davis.
Ladies and gentlemen, your next comedian.
Shouldn't drink on an empty head, you know that, don't you?
That is the shittiest heckle I have ever heard in my life.
Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it.
What's a bucket list?
You have dangerously underprepared yourself for the shit that is about to get real.
When you start out in comedy, you're looking for stuff that is funny. When you get good, you find stuff that you want to talk about and make that funny. So says comedian Wayne Deakin, a 20-plus year veteran of stand-up comedy who has performed in London, New York, Las Vegas, Montreal, all over Australia and to Aussie troops in the Middle East. In this School of Hard Knock Knocks podcast episode, straight shooter Deaks shares his philosophy on taboo topics, discusses the willful ignorance of audiences, and shares great advice for up-and-comers who prefer to perform more edgy topics. And if you enjoy this interview with Wayne Deakin, you might be interested to learn that he's our guest comedy coach at the School of Hard Knock Knocks stand-up comedy course in Melbourne this September. Check out www.schoolofhardknockknocks.com for more information and sign up. And now, here's our host Steve Davis and comedian Wayne Deakin.
Wayne Deakin, welcome to the School of Hard Knock Knocks podcast.
Look, Steve, it's an absolute pleasure to be here, mate.
That's great. Now, look, I'm glad you've taken time to chat with us because you've been in this industry for 20-odd years. So can you take us back? What got you into comedy way back then?
I think I was working in advertising, working car advertising for big American ad agencies on big American car brands, and just the idea of pure creativity. You could sync up something that afternoon and see if it worked that night. Whereas with advertising, you put a car ad together, it takes 6 months and you still don't know whether or not it had any traction. So just that idea of getting as close as possible to pure creative ideas, I guess.
In the car ad game, I interviewed a gentleman who worked here on the Mitsubishi account in Australia, and he had a couple of really terrible things happen when a car was doing a jump and it slammed into things and the driver got almost damaged. Were there any formative moments like that in your car advertising where things went off the rails?
Definitely not. We're a responsible ad agency and we certainly wouldn't let a car get air during an ad shoot. Ridiculous Mitsubishi. Who do I think they are?
I take it that wasn't your account then?
Mitsubishi?
Yeah.
God, no.
You've performed in lots of places, London, New York, Las Vegas, Montreal, I'm told, and of course all around Australia. In those travels, is there a place that's won your heart more than others that you've enjoyed the most, a particularly favourite comedy venue?
A comedy store in London is always sort of a place where you sort of still got to prove yourself. It's a weird gig insofar as it's always going to be great fun. But do you use this, because it's always a red hot audience, do you use this to try out material that you're really proud of but you know it's not going to work anywhere else, or do you just sit back and do some old material and just sit back and have an absolute ball with it? Because the room is always red hot. It's sold out months ahead. It's low ceilings, perfect stage, it's perfect everything. And so, yeah, just walking on there, just knowing that you got 20 minutes, you're just going to crush it, but how you go about it and, what you do with it.
And what did you come to as a position on making the most of that room? Did you go more the experiment and just take a few risks, or did you like playing it safe and just lapping it up?
If you mix it up a bit, because I usually do 2 shows a day, so the early show you might just do older material and structure your set, putting in your absolute killer material and just coast on it, and the late show you might take a few risks and push the boat out a bit.
And what do you think it is about that room in particular, the Comedy Store, that had that vibe? You talked about the physical things like the low room, the low ceiling, and I suppose that closeness breeds that sort of electricity. Or is it something about the English audiences primarily? There'll be visitors as well, but the English that have a higher bar for comedians, and maybe they get exposed to a lot more?
I think also the Comedy Store is sort of a passport in the UK. If you play the store, if you ring up for other gigs anywhere in the UK and say, the first question they ask is, do you play the store? Which means that, you're good enough to play their club. So it is that progression. Is once you play the store, there's no hard. You can do TV and panel shows and all that of it, but as a pure stand-up, which I am, it's, I play the store as sort of a badge of honour. So when you go there, you really want to crush it as well. So it's more what the comedians think, and that badge of honour of that's as high as you can get in terms of being a clubbing stand-up.
That's interesting about what the comedians think, because I used to work in radio, and I know there was a sense where you're performing, sure, for your audience, but you're really performing for your competitors and peers at other stations to earn their respect. Is that in the mix as well when it comes to not just the Comedy Store, but from the way you look at comedy? Does the opinion of your peers count for anything?
It counts for everything. Like that's your competitors. That's comedy's the same as boxing. It's getting in there with your competitors and seeing who's the best at this. It's stripping it back. Anybody who says they're not competitive is lying. All the top guys are so competitive. That's what I without mentioning names, I know, very good friends with one of Australia's top comics, and he pretty much knows every comic, every open micer's joke, just so that it fires him up to write better jokes.
Wow. Okay.
Where everybody is, and what their structure is, and you just go, how did they get that gig? They're going to bomb.
Do you have a voodoo doll for some comics?
Oh, that's just out of suburban gigs, so that'll sort them out. Footy clubs.
Actually, they're a tough.
So it always amuses me. Every year, the Melbourne Comedy Festival comes around, and it's the same acts get the same press release. And hey, what's your worst gig? And their worst gig is always like, I was doing some corporate, and they just spoke the whole way through my set. Like, it was terrible. Like, their idea of a bad gig is just someone talking through their $10,000 check. Like, those guys are just unbelievable.
Yeah, because it's a baptism of fire in a footy club.
Yeah, well, it's the same everywhere in the world. It's just those where you're doing audiences that know each other quite well. They're the tough ones. Is that you know that as soon as you bring up a punt, you do a setup, and they're already yelling out, "Hey, that's like you, Dave!" before you even get to the punchline. It's the same with doing military stuff. Is they've been living in each other's pockets for 5 years, it's their turf. Whereas doing comedy clubs, they're coming to your house, so you set the agenda, and you're the higher status, so they tend to sit back and listen. But if you walk into a footy club or army barracks or something like that, or a netball club, it's their house, and you're just a performing monkey. That's when you've got to be good.
Do you think getting a bit of goss on some local people in the military club or the footy club or the netball club beforehand is worth the effort if you can get it, so you can disarm some of that?
Always. And that's the same as, I've done gigs for Royal Family, I've done gigs for CEOs, head of football clubs, all that sort of stuff. The more mail you can get on anyone, and it's surprising how that translates from the footy club to the boardroom to the first 11 to whatever. It's the stuff about if I'm doing a corporate, I'll generally try and go in there and meet with the company secretary or at least the personal assistant to the director, and just get all the company goss, and that is gold. If you can get 10 minutes worth of material out of that, then you're home and hosed.
Yeah, great. Free speech and taboo topics. It's something that comes up in our courses at the School of Hard Knocks over and over again. Are there any taboos in stand-up comedy?
Absolutely not.
Really?
It just depends how good a writer you are.
Right.
No. I mean, there's certain topics that are are you good enough to write about it? We'll write about it. There's no taboo topics. There's taboo jokes. Because
they're not well made. So some jokes are taboo because they just they're car wrecks waiting to happen.
Well, they're just not clever or smart enough to work around whatever topic you want to talk about. Look, the be-all and end-all of stand-up comedy, the only quote that matters, Chris Rock said, and Chris Rock's pretty much the go-to guy for if you want quotes, is when you start out at comedy, and there's still people doing it now, headlining around the world, the same. When you start out in comedy, you're looking for stuff that's funny, right? That's how you start out as a comedian. When you get good, you find stuff you want to talk about and you make that funny, right? So if you want to talk about fat people or AIDS or whatever, you talk about it, you make it funny because you want to talk about it. You want to talk about race, make it funny. You want to talk about Aboriginals, make it funny. That's the only thing that matters in stand-up, is when you get good enough to talk about what you want and you make that funny. Everything else is bullshit. Put that on a T-shirt.
Yeah, exactly. And then wear it in.
That's not being arrogant. That's just, how I judge other stand-up. It's that guy walking around going, hey, do you ever notice how, the bottom drawer is always full of electricals? Who gives a shit, mate?
There is a degree, though, of shift that I've noticed in the last, say, 3 years, of increased sensitivity in the media and in some audience groups where it really is more high-charged than much more of a powder keg of, especially with gender-based issues. But again, I think you're saying read the above. It doesn't matter how sensitively charged the times might be. It's just up to you as a comic to find the clever way to get that funny stuff through and bring people along with you.
Look, the main difference is the change of audience is that people go to comedy, they read the papers, they're on the social medias looking to take offence. That didn't happen when I started. When I started, if you didn't like a joke, you didn't laugh at it. You got people now, I'll finish a gig and you get home and people have Googled you and emailed you and found your social media and sent you a message about some joke they didn't like. That's the difference, is people think that they're looking for offence. And you can see it, I'm a mate of Jim Jeffries. I've been to a heap of Jim shows, and you watch the audience, and there's still people go to Jim Jeffries and are offended and look to be offended and wait. He sold out 14,000 tickets to a show, and there's still 20 people waiting out the front to tell him what they think about his show. And that's what we, as comedians, every time a comedian apologises for a joke, a little piece of me dies. It's like, dude, you're selling out. You're making it worse for the next person. Just go, it's a joke. Fuck off. You can't. That's what's changing. Is A, people look for offence, and B, the willful ignorance of irony and satire. People taking jokes at face value when it's supposed to be satire. I hate women. Well, do you? And this is the debate I have. Is, you made a really sexist joke. Do you think I believe that joke? Well, no, but you shouldn't say it. Well, if you don't believe it, then it's satire. If I'm sending something up to ridicule it, that's satire, and you just don't you don't get the joke, so don't go to stand-up comedy. It's not for you. And that's what everybody should say to everybody who fucking whinges, is just go, hey, look, there's plenty of other art forms. Stand-up comedy's a little bit too complicated for you. That's the difference, is the willful ignorance of satire and, just looking for offence because it makes them feel important, because they're never going to do stand-up. They're never going to make a sculpture. They're never going to achieve anything. So the only way they can have any effect in this world is to bring someone else down.
I think,
but other than that, fuck them, who cares?
That is such a good way of saying it. Not so much the fuck them bit, but the willful ignorance. I think you've just nailed what's going on there, because on a certain day, that same person might have laughed, but they could choose to become rigid in the way they interpret something to fire up that offensed or offended element of themselves, which is what PR spin people do time and time again. Decide, are we going to go for the jugular and ride the high moral horse, or are we going to let it ride? And it depends what they can get out of it.
And the beauty of that is it's hard to, and I've gone through this, and doing cruise ships, just trying to educate cruise directors, is you can't explain a joke and expect, because it's on paper, the joke's horrible, but it's satire. You're setting it up, so don't try and fight jokes. Just go to the coits or something. It's just not for you, because jokes in and of themselves are indefensible, because you can willfully ignore the point you're trying to make in order to make your point, and the comedian's always going to lose. So I'm sorry for everybody who's offended. Don't be. I mean, was it Jimmy Carr did a joke about say what you want about all these landmines and IEDs in Iraq and Afghanistan, but we're going to have a hell of a Paralympic team. And people got upset with him, but he had done that joke at a hospital for injured troops. And it wasn't the troops getting upset about it. The troops were pissing themselves, but everybody else gets indignant about it. And he fucking apologised. If he hadn't apologised and said, it's none of your business, if you don't get the joke, that's your problem, it's not mine. And the joke is, of course, the big picture is, why are we sending these troops over there to get their legs blown off? That's the big picture. That's the real joke. That's the point he's making. And he apologised, and it just gives it another news cycle. But if he just went out there and just said, look, I've done enough gigs. If anybody who has lost their legs in a military conflict is offended, here's my number and I'll give him a call. But don't go out and give across the board, I apologise for that joke. Don't apologise for that joke. Anybody who gets offended by that joke should be offended that you're sending British troops over to walk around where IEDs are, i.e. you're not spending enough money on defence and working with your troops. I mean, that's the real point. So, that's how deep this stuff gets if you really want to think about it. Otherwise, I just tell people, just don't go to comedy. It's not for you.
So if a little part of you dies when a normal stand-up apologises, a big part of you must have died when Jimmy Carr did that apology.
Yeah, it was sort of like, mate, Jimmy Carr's an offensive comic, right? That's what he does. Also, what he does is not real. It's jokes. He talks about my girlfriend, this, my girlfriend. Of course, people know it's not real. That's not real. It's a conceit, and you're pretending that it's real just to take offence. And even the people who are taking offence. I was just going to give another example. But all that stuff it's only going to get worse before it gets better. But then, people, it's only a small percentage who do get offended, but they're very noisy, and it's easy copy. For if you're a journo, just find a tweet and write it. It's easy, but writing jokes is still very, very difficult.
Do we need a stand-up comedians guild to give each other? No. Okay.
It happened in the UK when I was over there. We had all these meetings and stuff. I just got dragged into, well, men shouldn't do this, and it came down to the guild started saying you can't do rape jokes, and we just went, right, fuck off. We don't feel safe on being on bills where people do rape jokes. It's like, okay, so the first rule of the guild is we're censoring. Okay, right. So yeah, it just sort of all fell apart.
All right, let's lift our gaze a bit to the different way we adapt to the number of people in a room. 25,000 people odd, you've performed in front of that sort of number, but you also have done clubs of 50, probably even smaller. Is there? What are the differences and the different challenges for you when you're doing those two extremes of volume when it comes to audience members?
Well, the smaller is the harder. I've done hour shows to 2 people. Ooh. So I don't think I would have done it to 1, but 2's okay. And I've done, all day to 14,000. So it's timing. It's in the smaller crowds, like smaller club crowds, I'll always sit on a chair and just make it more conversational.
Right.
On the big crowds, you can just stand up and get more lean back on your jokes, really spit them out, and you got to wait. Sometimes 15 seconds for laughter to go, and that's not big noting myself. That's just how long it takes 14,000 people to stop laughing.
We are social creatures, and so
it's a different. It's a different energy, of course, but in terms of, performance and stuff, you don't change. I'm sorry, I'm just watching this. I'm looking out the window. I live on the beach on St Kilda, and this dad's kicking the footy with his kid, and he just did a drop kick and smashed the little kid across the road. Sorry, I'm never getting hurt. It's still funny.
I'm offended by that, having been that little kid in the past.
Yeah.
Now
the kid's just kicking the other way. It's not even kicking his dad. But that's just a skill. But you just I've sat on the edge of a smaller crowd. You just sit on the edge of a stage. The trick is just to not. If it's a small crowd, A, don't talk about it. It's not their fault. No one else turned up. And B, stop asking each of them questions. Just do your material. Just make it more conversational.
Yeah, I want to get a bit personal about body parts here. I should have warned you about that before we started this interview. Keith Richards. His hands, they're insured for $1.6 million. Heidi Klum's legs for $2 million. But apparently you've been insured for $5 million. Now, what have you got that's so expensive?
It's just that was going to the military, going to Iraq. So not so much as I'm worth anything. It's just my parents are very litigious.
So you did a military gig where? In Iraq?
Oh, and I've been to Iraq and Afghanistan like 7 or 8 times. But when we used to go over there, they used to insure. Well, I say in the joke, I think it said $2 million, but I think it was actually $5 million when we got insured for. And that was the first time when they really cared about us. Last time we didn't get insurance, they just gave us one of those toe tags so they could find us when we were dead. So we just got the blood group and all that sort of. Well, they're called dog tags.
Yeah, dog tags.
We just got dog tags last time.
Oh, right.
So they're on a budget now.
Now, on that note, the thing that intrigues me about comics and any entertainers going to a war zone is that here we all go out, we enjoy a bit of comedy. The worst thing that's going to happen to us, unless you get mugged, I suppose, is you get to serve a drink of beer that's flat or a coffee that's cold. But you're going to a theatre of war where lives are under direct threat all the time. It's life and death. Is it surreal to be doing comedy in that environment? Can you take us through that, I guess, the chemistry of that environment? Is it different? I feel like it would be different for you, for them, or am I just in my insular little world blowing things out of proportion?
Well, no, it's so dependent on exactly where you are, which base you are, which group you're talking to. Like, you might do... The idea of us touring there is sort of to make... A lot of it is ticking... Like, the military is just ticking boxes, so they need to show that during so-and-so's deployment for 6 months, they got entertainment. So in order to tick that box, I mean, I've sat on the edge of a bed in a barracks when 5 guys who have been on patrol for a week and they just want to have a shower and go to bed. I've had to sit on the end of a bed and do half an hour of comedy to them just so they've ticked that box, and they're just like, mate, just shut up. We want to go to bed. So it goes from that to, and those guys, they've killed people that day, and you're trying to be funny, and then it goes to the other guys who are, Raffies, who the closest they get to the Taliban is 33,000 feet, so they don't care. They're in no danger. That, it's just like for them, it's like you're just interrupting our cocktail hour. So even on the same base, on the same day, you might do 10 different gigs, because you'll do gigs all day just trying to get to everybody, because everyone works different hours and different patrols and all that sort of stuff. So you might get, just on a base, you'll get the most diametric opposed gigs that you wouldn't get in 15 years just doing gigs around the world. That's the interesting thing.
Yeah.
And, the closer they are to dying, the more they're into the gig and the more shit they give you. They're not like, oh, well, you're so great for coming over here. They're like, you better be funny, mate. That's when it's great. That's when you want it, when the pressure's on.
Well, you seem to encounter pressure, because if you do badly on a cruise ship, I guess someone could throw you over the edge. But in that dorm with those 5 soldiers who just wanted you to shut up. They've got weapons next to them. They could probably find a way to dispose of your body. That alone would, I just find it difficult.
Well, it depends on the current court case going on in Sydney at the moment, isn't it? With the VC winner, whether or not you can dispose of a body and no one finds out about it. It helps if no one videotapes it and then keeps the hard drive in their garden. But anyway, look,
I'm glad you've thought that through.
I've done a gig too. He's very litigious as well, as it turns out. It's always bizarre like that. I did a gig in Talil, which I got a long joke about, but basically 2,500 people with guns, because on that base is a hot base, so you can't be more than a metre away from your firearm. So you're doing a gig to 2,500 people with guns. Gee. But ironically, you get used to the gun so fast that when you come back to Australia, it does freak you out that people aren't armed. It's like, I don't feel safe walking around here without people who are armed.
Okay. Are you packing at the moment?
No, that's what I pay our government for.
Okay. Now, talking of your home life, do you still live with Stephen Gates, or Gatesy from Tripod?
How do you know that?
Oh, I do my research.
Freaky Steve.
I've seen the videos. I don't want to talk about him so much but whether, I just want to know the rules when you get home about comedy. Do you spar, or is it just like, I lived with a chef once and all he made at home was baked beans on toast. He did not want to know about cooking. What's it like when you're living with another highly charged comic?
I think Husey had a great joke, just on exactly what you said. His girlfriend was always like, "You're not very funny at home." He's like, "I'm like a chef. I never cook at home." But Gates is a music comedian, and that doesn't really count. So no, we don't talk about material. Gates is, aside from anything else, he's one of the nicest, most wonderful, generous human beings on the face of the planet. So it is great. It's very, very difficult, given our lifestyles, to live with a civilian.
Okay.
And in terms of material and bouncing off stuff like that, you'd never do that. It's rude. Okay.
Good to know. And by the way, that's very different to the way you described him before we started recording, but we'll leave that one in. You also talk. I haven't actually been stalking you, but I do also know that you lived in London until recently. Were you brought back by COVID, or was there something else that brought you back?
No, before that, I came back just before that. No, just sort of London had run out of steam. Same with a lot of places in the world, all the TV comedy killed comedy. It went from... it's the thing about British comedy, and the reason why it was booming for 10 years and it was phenomenal while I was there, was that people would go to the local comedy club, didn't care who was on. They knew that they trusted the bookers and they trusted the... So you go to the comedy store, you go to Jonglers, you go to it didn't matter what was on, you just go to comedy because you knew it was going to be good. And then TV boomed, so you went to see Michael McIntyre, you went to see Kevin Bridges, you went to see so-and-so, and it just killed all the clubs because people would pay 30, 40 quid to go and see someone at a big venue but not go to the local comedy club. So it just sort of killed, guys like me who are no-name comics, but good comics that can just, do 3 or 4 gigs a week. You could make a good living over there just doing 2 gigs a week, 20 minutes. So 40 minutes a week. Most of the time I was doing 40 minutes work a week and making a really good living. And then that died. That just went, the money just went down and down and down, and no accommodation. You're just driving all over England every weekend for, a quarter of the money when I started.
Well, that's not a funny ending to that story, is it?
I shot someone. I had to leave.
What about COVID, though, over here? Just coming back to COVID, you've had to cancel trips to the WA, and it's had a bit of a bite on you. How do you measure COVID's impact?
Well, it's just decimated me. I was, March last year, I was halfway through Adelaide Fringe. I had a few cruises. Then I had a 3-week residency at Caesar's Palace in Vegas, and I had a Middle East tour. Then I had 4 films and 3 movies I had to do, plus another American tour, plus hopefully some TV in the States. I had my year lined up, and then bang, all gone. And, that's going to take another 3 years to recover. So, the domestic stuff's a pain in the ass, but all the international stuff, getting all that is just 3 times as hard.
And on top of that, the Western allies have been withdrawing their troops from overseas, so that even cuts that market out.
Oh, look, China or something like that. There's always something.
Yes.
Don't believe everything you see in the papers. There's only supposed to be 80 people last time went over this bloody 1,000.
Let's finish off because School of Hard Knock Knocks, you're the guest comedy coach in September in Melbourne. What sort of advice are the students up for? What are you going to give them? Give us a taste of what they've got in store.
Well, there's not that many gigs around, so it'll mostly be discouragement. Stick with your day jobs, kids. There's not enough to go around. There's not enough for Uncle Wayne to put bread on the table. How about you back off a bit? No, it's basically get into it if you can write. I mean, all across, and I work a lot in New York and LA and obviously London and everywhere else. Is the audiences are nice, so people don't know if they're stuff. So, work out whether or not you really want to devote this much time to it, whether you've got a talent for it or you just want to be a stand-up. Nothing wrong with wanting to be a stand-up, but yeah, put in the work. That's the thing, you've got to enjoy. A lot of people don't enjoy writing. I really enjoy writing, and I like, that process, which is the answer to the first question. I like writing. A lot of people so many people, as you would understand, it's the same in radio, just get into it because it's look at me. If you're going to do that, then, you're wasting your time. You'll never get anywhere because it's a tough business. There's maybe 30 or 40 full-time comedians in Australia. Good luck trying to be one of them. I
mean, on the radio thing about look at me, it seems that there's a lot of look at me on radio and not actually much writing whatsoever, but that's a different topic. I just want to finish off on the
It's the same.
Yeah. True. As far as writing's concerned, just one last little thing. Do you have a set time and rigid sort of timetable, or you just find a pocket of time every now and then and just dedicate yourself to writing, or is it more flashes of inspiration?
If I've got, usually I'll do Perth, Adelaide, Melbourne festivals, so I need sort of a new show-ish every year. So that's sort of, 8 till 10 every morning, sitting there trying to write. You can write good stuff, but the great stuff comes on stage or in fits and spurts. So, yeah, you got to do both. So for me, that's how it works. Some people I know never put pen to paper and crushing out stuff, but, yeah, I'm very much glacial in my writing style.
Yeah, well,
it takes me ages to come up with good stuff.
I think the people doing that course are in for a great treat. Lots of stories and encouragement disguised as discouragement, or vice versa. Wayne Deakin, thanks for joining the School of Hard Knock Knocks podcast.
My pleasure. Looking forward to getting in front of some people.
Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast.
Ozcast.
Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.